Let's take an interesting limiting problem. It says that evaluate limit n tends to infinity, limit m tends to infinity, cosine factorial n pi x whole to the power 2m. So you can see that n is tending to a very large quantity, I mean m is tending to infinity. So we don't need to consider any right hand limit or left hand limit, to be honest here, because n is tending to infinity, so only one-sided limit is sufficient, and m is tending to infinity, so one-sided limit will be sufficient, because as we know that there is nothing to the right of infinity, which is supposed to be the end of the real number line. So in this case there is no consideration of RHL or LHL, but you can see that this angle, which is factorial n pi x, now this angle will play an important role here, because you know that factorial n is always going to be an integer and pi is getting multiplied with x. Now the nature of x will play an important role here, because if this angle comes out to be an integral multiple of pi, means factorial n into x comes out to be an integer, in that case this will be integral multiple of pi, and then cosine will give you a value which is 1 or minus 1. Okay, so then this limiting value will be analyzed in a certain way, and if this angle is not an integral multiple of pi, in that case we need to consider it in another way. So we'll be taking two cases out here. So we'll be taking first case, that's going to be that when this angle is not going to be an integral multiple of pi, that is when x is irrational. Okay, when the value x is going to be irrational, then let's see what happens. When x is irrational, then we can see that factorial n, which is an integer, is getting multiplied with x. So this quantity factorial n into x is never going to be an integer, so this is not an integer. So this, when getting multiplied with pi, so we can say that this angle is not an integral multiple of pi, so we can definitely say that this can never be equivalent to I into pi, some integer into pi. So we can easily claim that cosine of this particular angle, that is factorial n pi x, okay, so this angle is definitely going to be a value which is between minus 1 and 1, strictly within minus 1 and 1, because since this angle is not an integral multiple of pi, then we can say that the cosine value will be anything between minus 1 and 1, including 0. So we can say that this whole quantity will be lying between minus 1 and 1. So anything lying between minus 1 and 1 is getting multiplied infinite number of times, because you see that m is tending to infinity. So anything lying between minus 1 and 1 to the power infinity, so cos to the power 2m factorial n pi x, so that can safely said to be tending to 0. Okay, because this quantity will become very, very small, because it will be always bounded between minus 1 and 1, and that is getting multiplied to the power that is getting multiplied infinite number of times, and you can see that this is going to be an even number, so the negative values is also be easily taken care of by this even number. Anything negative comes here will be automatically converted to a positive value by this even quantity. So ultimately this whole thing will be tending to 0. So for the first case, the limiting answer is going to be 0. Okay, and we'll be taking another case, that is case 2. So what happens for case 2, and that case 2 is going to be x is rational. Okay, so if x is rational, that is we are taking x to be of the model p by q, where p and q are two integers. Okay, so if x is of the model p by q, then what happens, you can see that n factorial pi into x, and that x is going to be p by q. What is happening to this angle? Let's check out. You see that n factorial, this is consecutive product from 1 to n. As you know, factorial n means 1 to n, continuous product, and that n is becoming very, very large. N is tending to infinity. So basically factorial n means we are multiplying the consecutive integers starting from 1 up to, the process continues up to infinity. Okay, a very large integer. So in the process, definitely somewhere this integer q will turn up. Okay, because we are multiplying 1 to infinity, including all the integers, so definitely q should come out in the middle. So what will happen is that this q in the denominator and this q in the numerator will be cancelled out, and now we can see that numerator can be safely written to be an integer into pi. Okay, because the whole quantity is nothing but an integer, because it is 1 2 3 4 up to into pi into p. P is also an integer, so this whole thing is going to become an integer times pi. And as you know that cosine of integer times pi, cosine of an integer times pi is either +1 or -1. Okay, whereas I is an even integer, then it will be +1, and whereas I is an odd integer, then it will be -1. So if it is plus or -1, then we can easily say that cos to the power 2m into factorial n pi x will be nothing but something which is exactly +1 or -1 to the power a very large number. So the answer is going to be 1. Okay, because in that case our base is exactly becoming equal to +1 or -1. So in any case 1 to the power anything is going to be 1, and -1 to the power any even number has to be again 1. So in this particular case the limiting answer is going to be 1. Okay, so there are two possibilities for this limit. Case 1, when x is irrational. When x is irrational, the limiting value we have calculated, the limiting value is going to be 0. And another case is that when x is rational, then the answer is going to be 1.